My name is Selena Raine, and this is not just a story. This is my confession. A confession of love, pain, dreams, and the kind of devotion that can make or break a soul. If you listen closely, you will not just hear my voice, you will feel my heartbeat. Because what I'm about to tell you is not fiction, it is my life. I was born in Dallas, Texas, in a home that many would call a dream. My father was a successful real estate investor. My mother a graceful woman who spent her life serving charities and social causes. I grew up surrounded by chandeliers, libraries full of rare books, and the constant hum of a city that never really sleeps. My childhood was not unhappy, but it was sheltered. I was the daughter of privilege, the girl who was expected to shine at every ballet recital, the one always dressed in perfection, the one who smiled at parties even when she longed to run outside and breathe freely. And then, there was him, Darian Cross. He belonged to another world. The son of a man who worked 12 hours a day repairing broken cars in a garage. The son of a mother who sat at a sewing machine until midnight, just to put dinner on the table. They didn't have chandeliers, or crystal plates, or big vacations. They had love. They had struggle. They had reality. Darian grew up on the rougher side of Dallas. Streets where dreams were usually broken before they had the chance to grow. But somehow, he dreamed bigger than anyone I had ever met. And destiny, oh destiny has such a strange sense of humor, brought us together when we were just 15 years old. It happened in the school library. I still remember the smell of old books, the golden afternoon light falling across the shelves, and my heart beating in that awkward teenage rhythm. I had dropped a book, a heavy novel that slipped from my hands with a dull thud. I bent down to pick it up, but before my fingers could close around it, another hand reached out. His hand. Our fingers brushed, and that tiny touch was enough to send a shiver up my spine. He looked at me with eyes the color of storm clouds, eyes that carried both danger and safety in the same breath. And then he whispered words that I can never forget. "Careful, princess. Even stories can hurt if you hold them too tight." I froze. Not because of the words, but because of the way he said them. Soft, teasing, as if he already knew me. As if he could see straight into my soul. No one had ever spoken to me like that before. Not the polished boys from wealthy families. Not the rehearsed compliments at dinner tables. This was different. That day, something changed. The streets of Dallas no longer looked the same. Every classroom, every hallway, every corner of the school seemed to carry his shadow. Every night, when I sat in my perfectly decorated bedroom, I found myself waiting for tomorrow, just to see him again. Darian had a way of making the world feel alive. He would tell me things like, "Selena, the sky isn't blue. It's just pretending. The real color of dreams is deeper, like midnight." And I would laugh, even when my heart ached, because I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. I was falling for him. He would often look at me with that wild determination in his eyes and say, "One day, I'll give you a life where even the stars will envy you." And I, the girl who had everything, would silently cry at night, because I knew I didn't need the stars. I already had him. When I look back now, I realize that falling in love is never sudden. It is not lightning, it is not fire. It is quieter, like a candle flame. Small at first, but growing until it lights the whole room. That's what happened with Darian and me. After that day in the library, our paths kept crossing. At first it felt accidental, but deep down, I think fate was weaving its invisible threads. In math class, he would sit 2 rows behind me. I could feel his eyes on the back of my head, and when I turned, he would quickly look away, but not before flashing a half smile that melted me inside. At lunch, he would sometimes pass by my table, dropping little comments that only I could hear. "Careful, princess, your crown is slipping." And I would roll my eyes, but secretly my heart danced. It started with small conversations, a shared laugh in the hallway, a whispered joke during study period. But soon, those little moments became my lifeline. One evening, after school, I found him sketching in his notebook. "Sitting under the big oak tree behind the gym." Curious, I asked, "What are you drawing?" He looked up, his stormy eyes softening for the first time. You, he said simply. And then, after a pause, he added, not you as you are, but you as I see you.
Mai briskokt.
I leaned closer, and there it was. A pencil sketch of a girl sitting among stars. Her eyes wide open, as if she carried the whole universe inside her. I whispered, that's not me. And he shook his head. It is. You just don't see yourself yet. But I do. From that day, something shifted. We started talking for hours after school. Sometimes about dreams, his dream of leaving poverty behind. My dream of escaping the glass cage of expectations. Sometimes about fears, his fear of losing his family to hardship. My fear of living a life that looked perfect but felt empty. We shared secrets we had never told anyone. He once said to me, Selena, when I look at you, I don't see money or status.
Ici the girl who looked too hard at stupid joke, the girl who want freedom more than diamonds. That is the girl I'm falling for.
And my trembling voice answered, Darian, people think I have everything. But the truth?
You have nothing without you.
It was reckless. It was dangerous. But it was real. We began to meet in secret. Late walks near the empty football field. Study sessions that turned into whispered confessions. Moments where his hand brushed mine. And the whole world disappeared.
One night, under the Dallas sky.
He looked at me and said,
Promise me something.
What? I whispered.
Promise me you won't give up on US.
No matter what your family says. No matter what the world throws at us.
Promise me you'll fight.
I placed my hand on his chest.
Feeling the steady, wild beat of his heart.
And I whispered back, I promise.
Allons à Ibret, à Mur.
That was the night I realized.
He wasn't just falling in love.
I was surrendering my soul. Love, when it is young, feels like the whole world belongs to you. But soon, you realize the world is not always kind to lovers. The world has its rules. Rules about money, class, family, appearances. And in Dallas, those rules were sharp as knives. At school, whispers began. People noticed how often Darian and I spoke. How my laughter seemed louder when he was near. How his eyes searched for mine even in a crowded room. My so-called friends would tease me. Selena, you know your dad would never approve of him. He fixes cars. He doesn't even own one. They laughed. I didn't. One evening, at a dinner table lit by crystal chandeliers, my father said casually, Selena, have you thought about college? I have a few friends at Harvard, Yale. It's time you start focusing on the right people. The right connections. And my heart sank. Because I already knew. The right people he wanted for me were nothing like Darian. I tried to keep our love hidden. But mothers, they always know.
One night, my mother walked into my room. Finding me smiling at my phone.
Who are you talking to, darling? She asked softly. And for a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. But fear held me back. I simply said, just a friend. Yet mothers can see through lies. She kissed my forehead and whispered,
Be careful, Selena. The world is not kind to hearts like yours.
Meanwhile, Darian faced storms of his own. His father worked endlessly. And often reminded him, Son, you don't belong in their world. People like us, we fix their cars. We don't marry their daughters. But Darian was fire. He looked me in the eyes one evening. His hands trembling, but his voice steady. Selena, I don't care if I have to fight the whole city. I will never let them decide who I can love. Tears filled my eyes.
He whispered back. And he don't care if he lose everything. Allons, I don't lose you.
But the pressure kept building. We were 16, 17.
The years of youth, the years of discovery.
And yet, we were already carrying the weight of a war.
A war between love and society.
There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was selfish for loving him. There were days when Darian would avoid me, not because he wanted to, but because he didn't want to make my life harder.
And then came the breaking point. One afternoon, my father cooked me leaving school.
He saw Darian walking beside me.
Or en brushing together.
our smiles too raw to be just friendship. When we reached the car, my father's face turned to stone. He looked at Darian with eyes colder than winter and said, "You
Stay away from my daughter.
She deserves a future, not this." My chest tightened.
Dad, stop.
I pleaded, but he ignored me. Darian stood tall, his fists clenched but his voice calm. "Sir, with all respect, your daughter is not a possession. She deserves the right to choose." The silence that followed was sharper than a blade. That night, my father forbade me from seeing him again. He said, "Selena, one day you will thank me.
Love is fleeting.
Stability lasts." But what my father never understood was, Darian wasn't just love. He was my stability. He was my forever. And in that moment,
I sat by my window, staring at the Dallas skyline. I swore to myself,
no matter what storms came, I would hold on to him, because even if the world hated us, our hearts had already chosen. By the time we turned 18, the world expected us to walk separate paths. Graduation caps flew in the air, futures were being carved out, and everyone assumed mine would lead to Ivy League universities, while Darian's would lead back to the garage, covered in oil and sweat. But we knew better. We had whispered promises under the stars, and those promises became the map we carried in our hearts. I went to Southern Methodist University in Dallas,
staying close to home,
while Darian took classes at a community college, working nights at the garage to pay tuition. It wasn't easy. While I drove a car gifted by my parents, he rode buses that often broke down. While I sat in lecture halls with polished floors, he studied under flickering lights in crowded classrooms. But none of that mattered when we were together. Because when we met,
the world fell away. I remember sneaking out of campus one rainy evening,
meeting him at a small cafe. We sat by the window, raindrops racing each other down the glass. And I whispered, "Sometimes I feel like I don't belong in either world. Not in my family's, not in yours.
Only in ours."
He reached across the table, taking my hand in his rough, calloused palm, and said softly, "Then let's build our own world, Selena. Brick by brick, even if it takes years.
One day, no one will own us. Not your father.
Not poverty. Just us." And in that moment, I realized our love wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a mission. But missions come with battles. There were nights when Darian worked until dawn, his body aching, his eyes heavy, yet he still came to see me. I begged him, "Rest, please." But he only smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face, and whispered, "You're my rest, Selena. You're my home." Meanwhile, my parents grew restless. They wanted me to intern at law firms, attend business dinners, network with families who could secure my future. But I was already secure, in Darian's arms, under the Dallas stars. One night, after a heated argument with my father, I ran out, tears streaming down my face. I called Darian, my voice shaking, and he came rushing on his old motorbike, stopping right in front of me. I collapsed into his arms, crying, "They'll never accept us. Maybe we're being foolish. Maybe love isn't enough." He cupped my face, forcing me to look into his stormy eyes, and said with a fierceness I'll never forget, "Listen to me. Love is enough. It has to be enough, because it's all we have. And I swear to you, Selena, I will make sure it's enough." That night, we made a decision that changed everything. We promised each other that no matter how hard it became, we would marry. Not in golden halls, not in front of society, but in the truth of our hearts. We were young. We were reckless. But we were ready to fight the whole world. And as I lay my head on his chest, listening to the rhythm of his heartbeat, I knew I would rather live one hard life with him than 1,000 easy lives without him. I wish I could tell you that our wedding was like a fairy tale, that there were flowers and music, chandeliers and laughter. But the truth? Our wedding was nothing more than a small ceremony in a dusty little chapel on the edge of Dallas. There were no diamond rings, only simple silver bands. There were no hundreds of guests, just 2 of his friends and 1 of mine. And yet, when I looked into Darian's eyes as we said our vows, I felt richer than any bride in the grandest cathedral. He whispered as he slid the ring onto my finger. I can't give you the world, Selena, but I'll spend my life trying. And I whispered back, I don't need the world. I only need you. We left that chapel hand in hand, knowing that the hardest part of our journey had only just begun. Our first home was a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, and the nights were filled with the humming of machines downstairs. We barely had enough money for furniture. A mattress on the floor became our bed. A wooden crate became our table. And yet, that small, broken apartment was heaven to me. Because it was ours. Because it was love. But love does not pay bills. Darian worked 2 jobs. At the garage during the day, delivering packages at night. He came home exhausted, hands blistered, but still kissed me as if I was the only reason he was alive. I tried to help, taking small tutoring jobs, saving every penny. Some nights we ate nothing but instant noodles. Other nights, we shared one sandwich and laughed at our own hunger. People pitied us. Some mocked us. But we had something no one else did. A bond that poverty could not break. Still, poverty is cruel. There were moments when it pushed us to the edge. One winter, Darian fell sick from overwork. He coughed through the nights, fever burning his skin. Yet he refused to stop working. I cried, holding his hand, begging him. Please, Darian, we don't need money more than I need you. And even with his weak voice, he whispered back. But without money, Selena,
I'm afraid of losing you.
That night, I held him close, tears soaking his shirt, and I whispered again and again.
You'll never lose me.
Never.
I promised you that, remember?
He smiled faintly, his eyes closing. Forever. Forever. There were also moments of joy. Simple joys, but the kind that stay with you forever. Like the time he surprised me with a tiny bouquet of wildflowers, bought with the change left in his pocket. He knelt down dramatically in the middle of our apartment and said, "For the most beautiful queen who rules over ramen noodles and broken furniture." I laughed so hard that tears rolled down my cheeks. And in that laughter, I realized that happiness is not built on money. It is built on moments like these. But life has its cruel rhythm. And just when we thought we had survived the hardest storms, new ones arrived. Darian's garage job was cut. Bills began piling up. We argued, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in shouts. Not because we loved each other less, but because the weight of the world was too heavy on our shoulders. There were nights when I turned away in bed, crying silently so he wouldn't hear. There were nights when he sat outside on the steps, head in his hands, wondering if he was enough. And yet, every morning without fail, we found our way back to each other. Because no matter how cruel poverty was,
love pulled us back.
I once asked him, in one of those dark nights,
Do you regret it, Darian?
Choosing me, choosing this life. He looked at me, eyes raw with exhaustion and love, and said,
Selena, I dare ter fight every storm with you. Then live one calm day without you.
So no, never. And I realized then, our love was not fragile. It was forged in fire. People often say love conquers all. But the truth is, sometimes, even love trembles under the weight of reality. By our 3rd year of marriage, the pressure had grown unbearable. Bills piled higher than our dreams.
Every knock on the door felt like a warning.
Rent due, electricity past deadline, or some new notice demanding money we didn't have. Darian worked harder than ever. His hands were always blistered, his back always sore. I watched him drag his tired body home at midnight, collapse on the couch without even eating. I tried to stay strong. I worked extra shifts, skipped meals, told him again and again,
We'll make it, Darian. I believe in us.
But belief doesn't erase hunger. Faith doesn't clear debts. And slowly, like cracks in glass, doubts began to form.
The first real fight came one night in winter.
The heater had broken, and we sat wrapped in blankets, our breath visible in the freezing air. I whispered, trying to comfort him. Maybe it's okay if we move in with my parents for a while. At least until we're stable. He froze. His jaw tightened. And then, in a voice sharper than I'd ever heard, he said, "So that your father can see me as a failure? So he can remind me every day that I couldn't give his daughter a life she deserves?" I reached for his hand, tears welling up. "Darian, that's not what I mean." But he pulled away, standing, pacing the room like a caged lion.
You don't understand, Selena. Every time I look at you.
I feel like I'm stealing you from a better life. And maybe you'd be happier without me. His words struck harder than any storm.
He stood there, broken, whispering. Don't you dare say that. I chose you.
I would choose you again. Even in hunger, even in cold.
You are my happiness.
He stopped, his chest rising and falling. And finally his voice cracked. Then why does it feel like I'm only dragging you down? That night, we slept back to back. Tears soaking into our pillows. Both of us too stubborn, too hurt to reach out. Days turned into weeks. The silence between us grew. We still loved, but love was buried under exhaustion. Like flowers under snow. And then, came the moment I feared most. Darian looked at me one night. Eyes hollow with guilt. And whispered, "Selena, maybe you should go back. To your parents. To comfort. To warmth. I don't want you to suffer with me anymore." My whole body shook. I grabbed his face in my hands. Tears streaming down my cheeks. "No. Don't you understand? I don't want comfort. I don't want diamonds, or chandeliers, or any of that life. If I don't have you, Darian, I have nothing." For a long moment, he just stared at me, and then broke into sobs. Sobs I had never seen from him before. The man who carried storms in his eyes was now collapsing in my arms. I held him through the night, whispering again and again, "I'm not leaving. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. You are my forever." And yet, deep inside, I knew the truth. Love had survived the fire before, but now it was being tested by ice. And if we didn't find a way out soon, the ice would break us. After months of silent suffering, we finally realized something crucial. Love alone could not survive on promises, it needed action. Darian, despite exhaustion, began taking extra classes at night. He studied business management, finances, and even marketing. Every morning, he left before sunrise. And every night, he returned with ideas, plans, and determination. I too worked tirelessly, tutoring students online and managing odd jobs. We were barely surviving, yet for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. One evening, while counting coins on our tiny wooden table, Darian looked up and said, "Selena, remember the promise we made under the stars? That one day, we would build our own world." I nodded, exhausted but smiling. "It's time," he said. "I found a small investment opportunity. It won't be easy, but if we work together, we can create something real." I stared at him, awe and disbelief mixing in my chest. You mean it?" "I mean it," he said, reaching across the table to hold my hand. "We've survived hunger, exhaustion, and doubt. If we survive that, we can survive anything." Over the next year, we poured every ounce of energy into that tiny opportunity. Days blurred into nights. We argued, we cried, we laughed, we fought with stubborn pride. But slowly, the pieces began to fit together. Darian's garage skills and my organizational abilities complemented each other perfectly. We transformed a small, almost forgotten auto shop into a modest but thriving business. The first paycheck we earned together. I remember him holding my hand and saying, "This is ours. Not my family's, not yours. Ours." I laughed through tears. "And we survived." "We survived," he echoed, and pulled me into the tightest hug I've ever known. Success, however, did not change us. We remained the same couple who shared noodles on cold nights. The same couple who whispered promises in the dark. The difference was, we could now dream bigger. We traveled little by little, just to breathe freedom. We bought a small home of our own, painting the walls together, choosing furniture with both love and practicality. And every evening, no matter how tired we were, Darian would take my hand, look into my eyes, and whisper, "Selena, I told you the stars would envy you. Look around. We're living our dreams." And I would smile, thinking of those first nights in our tiny apartment, of all the tears we shed, all the fights we survived. And I would answer,
"No, Darian.
We are the stars." It was not just the business or financial stability that healed us. It was knowing, without a doubt, that we had endured the fire together. We had seen the worst of the world. And still, when we looked at each other, we saw nothing but love. Even after all we had survived, life had one last test for us. Success had brought comfort, yes, but it also brought new pressures. Expectations, envy, and the subtle reminders that the world never stops judging. One morning, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was shaky, almost trembling. "Selena, your father wants to meet. He wants to apologize. He's been ill and he's realized, perhaps he was wrong about Darian." My heart raced. Part of me wanted to run, to throw my arms around my father and say it was all okay. But another part of me feared that reopening old wounds might pull us apart once more. I turned to Darian. His hand was steady, his eyes soft but strong. "Selena, whatever happens, we face it together. No one can shake us now." And together, we went. The meeting was awkward at first. My father's gaze shifted between me and Darian, like he was measuring every inch of him. But Darian did not flinch. He looked straight at my father and said with calm determination, "Sir, I love your daughter. I have nothing to offer but my heart and my honesty. And if that is enough, I promise to spend the rest of my life making her happy." My father stared. I held my breath. Then, after a long pause, my father's shoulders softened. He nodded. "I underestimated you, Darian. Perhaps, love is stronger than money." I cried that day, not out of joy alone, but out of relief, forgiveness, and the quiet satisfaction of enduring. But reconciliation was not the only challenge. Months later, Darian's father fell ill. The man who had once told Darian he didn't belong in my world now needed help. We stepped in together, caring for him, proving that love is not just about two hearts, it's about healing families, bridging worlds, and fighting life's battles hand in hand. During one quiet night, Darian whispered as I rested my head on his shoulder, "Selena, after everything, I finally understand. Love isn't just surviving hardship. It's lifting each other, every single day, even when the world wants to pull you apart." I smiled through tears. "I understand too, Darian. And we've already done it. Together, always." The years passed. Our business grew, our home became warm and full of laughter, and our love deepened with each shared sunrise. We still remembered the nights of hunger, the nights of cold, the nights of fear. But those nights had forged something unbreakable. A love story not just told in fairy tales, but lived in every sacrifice, every promise, every heartbeat. And when I look at Darian now, I see more than the boy who once sketched me under an oak tree. I see the man who fought storms with me, who carried me when I could no longer stand, who whispered every day, "You are my forever." I smile, because I know the truth. We are not just two people in love. We are proof that love can survive poverty, pain, doubt, and even the harshest storms. We are proof that when two hearts truly choose each other, nothing, not society, not money, not hardship, can ever break them apart. As I sit here today, telling you our story, I realize that life is not measured by wealth, titles, or appearances. It is measured by the hearts we touch, the hands we hold during storms, and the promises we keep even when everything else falls apart. Darian and I survived poverty, disapproval, sleepless nights, illness, exhaustion, and moments when giving up seemed easier. And yet, here we are. I often remember the first time he whispered to me under the oak tree, "Careful, princess, even stories can hurt if you hold them too tight." I didn't understand then. Now I do. Love is both fragile and fierce. It can hurt, It can bend you, it can bring you to your knees. But if nurtured with trust, patience, and unwavering commitment, it can lift you higher than you ever dreamed possible. Darian taught me something I will carry forever. Selena, the world will try to define you, to tell you who to love, what to want, and who to become. But our hearts are ours alone. And I realized that life's greatest gift is not luxury, not comfort, not status. It is having someone who sees your soul, someone who chooses you every single day, someone who fights alongside you, someone who makes every struggle meaningful. We are proof that love is not just a feeling, it is a journey of fire, of storms, of tears, but also of laughter, hope, and triumph. And if you, sitting there, listening to our story, take away one lesson, let it be this. No matter how impossible it seems, no matter what obstacles the world puts before you, love that is true, love that is patient and brave, will find a way. Darian and I built our life from nothing. We fell, we stumbled, we cried. But every step, every tear, every night of hunger was worth it, because it led us here. Here, together, whole and unbreakable. So, to everyone out there, hold on to the people who matter. Fight for them, even when the world says you cannot. And remember, the greatest love stories are not written in gold. They are lived, one heartbeat at a time. Because love, real love, is forever.